Welcome back to Ask a Garden Coach. I'm Carolyn May. I'm excited to be back at this after a brief, 1 month or so vacation. But it's now garden season and it's time to answer questions. And so today we are going to be getting into the beginning of a whole new world. A whole new world. No. Copyright. Beep. Start over.
Why?
I don't know.
This is who you are.
That's true. This is who I am. Fine. We won't start over. This is just the natural. If you work with me, this is what you get. I'm kind of a nerd. Okay. This summer, we're going to be doing lots and lots on propagation because I'm discovering that I'm pretty good at it. I've had a lot of experience, and that's what people are asking me the most questions about. So give you what you want. Today, we're going to be talking about specifically a type of setup for growing your cuttings. So cuttings are when you take a piece of a plant and you grow new roots on it and you get a new plant. That's a cutting. We are going to be building a DIY Forsyth pot, which is something that came onto my radar like 2 or 3 weeks ago. A friend of mine shared a reel on Instagram and I commented, I said, that's interesting. And she asked me what my thoughts were. So I did some research and I'm going to share my thoughts today. So first, we're going to share the materials, make the Forsyth pot, share some information about it, how it works, why it works, and then, maybe I'll even plant some stuff in it. No, not today. You're going to have to wait till next week for me to plant stuff in it. Okay, so for your Forsyth pot, you're going to need some sort of a container. You don't want it to be porous. This one you want to hold moisture, but I do recommend having drainage holes on the bottom because you want the medium not to sit soggy inside the pot. The reel that I saw on Instagram actually said to have a sealed bottom, and I was very concerned about that because balancing hydration and moisture is probably the most easy to mess up part of propagation. So have drainage. The second thing you're going to need is a porous pot. Here I have some unglazed terracotta, and I've used this before as an Oya pot. I'll get back to that in a minute. And then I also in the bottom have a cork. Just plug in the hole in the bottom. I've seen putty used for this. I've seen silicone used for this. But quite frankly, if I pour water into this, I'm sure after a while it would seep, but like it's not leaking. You want something that will hold the water inside the container. Once you have your terracotta, not ready for that to be full yet, because that would make a big mess. Okay, next we need our growing medium. When you are doing propagation, you want to keep it sterile, kind of like when you're doing seedlings. A sterile mix is something that doesn't have a lot of organic matter in it and a lot of things that could be potentially eggs for pests or fungus or algae or other things. Because when you're propagating a cutting, you need to not have any of that competing for life in your delicate little cutting. So here I have a combination of equal parts vermiculite and perlite. And then I also have a container of coconut coir, which is a byproduct of the coconut industry. It's the ground up husk or shell of a coconut. I prefer this over using a peat moss, which is another standard ingredient because of the fact that it's seemingly, as far as I know, a more sustainable option for a growing medium. So for my Forsyth pot, I have my mediums. I have water on hand because I need my medium to be hydrated. And then I also have a local newspaper to put in the bottom, just simply to cover the drainage holes to keep from making a mess on the table. So you put your paper in, and then I'm going to just kind of alternate between these two mediums and mix as I go. So once I get this in here, I'm going to mix it up, get it nice and even. And it's okay if it doesn't fill up the pot entirely. We're just doing this for propagation. So you just need a decent depth that will be able to hold your cuttings. Okay, the next step will be to add water. The right moisture level for any kind of propagation is a wrung out sponge. That's what you're looking for. So if you squeeze it and you have a lot of water dripping out, it's a little on the wet side. You just want something that's just holding enough moisture. Okay, once you have your medium, then you're going to make a well in the center for your pot. I already put the cork inside, in there. So now I'm going to nestle this down inside. Dig a little deeper. Inside my pot. Being careful, trying not to get the medium inside the pot. If a little gets in there, it's okay. All right, so now here is my propagation pot. And then I also have a lid. This is just the saucer from the terracotta pot. Put that on top. Okay, so let's talk about this. Why does it work? What we've essentially made here is a wicking garden, a self-watering wicking garden. When you think of water going into soil, it's really easy for us to think that water is going to fall and it's just going to filter all the way down. When you're talking about moisture underneath the ground, gravity does not affect moisture the same way it does above the ground. So think of it like this. When you take a sponge and you get a corner of it really wet, or you stick a corner of it into water, what's going to happen is the rest of the sponge is also going to get wet. Eventually, the entire sponge will be equally hydrated if you take that corner out of the water, and you would have a fully hydrated sponge, right? So the way that this works is my medium on the outside is currently moistened, and then I have this water reservoir in the center. Terracotta, being porous, means it's going to sweat. And so as the medium dries out around the exterior, it's going to wick or draw out moisture from the center of it, where there's a lot of moisture, to balance out the hydration level in the soil. It's not up and down, it's just hydration throughout the entire medium. This is actually why there's a garden myth, and that's when you fill a container, it used to be said you put like rock and gravel and different things in the bottom to help with drainage. It doesn't work, because when you add water, it's going to hit that different level of texture of grit, and it's going to stop right there. And it's going to basically say, oh no, I need to sponge up this whole layer. And you end up oversaturating. The water just sits there right above the rock. And you would think it would filter through the rock. It doesn't. It's a fascinating experiment to try. I highly recommend it. Shoot, maybe I'll make another episode about that phenomenon to show you guys. But here we have our pot. This is called a Forsyth pot because it's named after a British gardener from the 1800s. His name was Alexander Forsyth, and he wrote for a lot of magazines and different publications. And that's where this came from. And that was like the mid 1800s. Now, I will say I heard about this, and I'd never heard of the Forsyth pot until like 3 weeks ago, but I have been very aware of Oya pots. Oya, O-L-L-A, is a form of irrigation that's been used for a very, very, very long time. I haven't thoroughly researched the history of Oya pots myself. If I find some resources, I will share them. Maybe that will be another fun episode in the future. But basically, an Oya pot is an earthen container like this that you bury, you put water into it, and the roots will draw water from that pot. So here, as your cuttings sit in this, when they start growing roots, the roots are actually going to seek out the water and are going to start to wrap around the terracotta in the center. And so maybe in a few weeks, I'll have an update to show you, and you can see what that looks like. Stay tuned for next week's episode. I am going to be taking some hydrangea and propagating them in this container, and I will show you the whole process and answer a whole bunch of questions I have on propagating hydrangea in that one. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, help us grow more gardeners together. I hope you have a lovely day. Enjoy the spring, and happy growing.